Yeah, yeah, no, it's yeah, I guess it's good to have like weekly AMAs. But I think perhaps it even well, I'm not sure. I was just thinking like the future of engagement could be like maybe 1 or every 2 days we do a new module or someone does a new module,
Mm.
and then I don't know, maybe you get like 100 or 200 comp for it by doing like just like doing a demonstration for the day, which like 30 minutes or something. You can incentivize it too. Uh, but
Okay, yeah.
but like if it's just me, like I'll just do like anything, like just like anything new, or like
Hmm.
take a repo and then making a module, just like kind of doing that once every day, once every 2 days, like or like not just me doing it, but eventually other people can show it can showcase too. And it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like one of those like daily things where people can just hop in. Um, yeah, like I think getting the voice channel more activated as like just like a space for people just to like do something about like X, even if it's not an event,
Yeah.
like probably should be used a bit. Um, and yeah, like
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it's kind of just having more demos and
Yeah.
like perhaps like I don't know, like tutorials like
Hmm.
that are like live and like people can ask questions. And doing that maybe like once or twice a week, or maybe even like every day for like 30 minutes or something. Um, like yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
if we can
about
get
a
the
way of
resources
structuring
and the
that.
topics and things like that to sort of cover, then there's definitely space for things like that.
Yeah.
I definitely think workshops and tutorials would be appreciated. I think
Mm.
that's a great addition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
No,
And
I
like
agree.
a little bit more sort of hustle and bustle, it would definitely sort of be a pleasant surprise.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's basically yeah. It'll essentially um be like like I guess we want to just show like okay, this is what you can do with Commune, and so
Mm.
every day we're gonna do something new. Like, and it could be as simple as taking another repo and making it public and like just making it like publicly accessible to people. It
Hmm.
could be just as simple as that. Like we don't have to do anything from scratch. We can just take anything that's open source and then make it public or working, and then serving that as a module. It kind of like so it doesn't have to be create anything. It could probably take 10 minutes even. Like
Potentially,
in
yeah.
some cases, yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
just
yeah,
making
just
sure that
like
we have a
doing those.
good underlying system for it to all sort of like work on its own, so it doesn't require like a super large amount of oversight. That's going to be like
Yeah.
the key impact, because otherwise people get annoyed if it doesn't go like the way that somebody else's has gone and things like that. So getting like a proper defined underlying like start to finish, front to back process for it.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be like the key thing, because then it runs itself, and that's kind of like that's a huge portion of I mean most projects and decentralized projects especially is that they run themselves.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like we, I think ideally we want to get ourselves into like the bounty system, like merging our bounty system
Mm,
with Subnet Zero's voting system with the DAO, where the
mm-hmm.
community can vote. Basically, maybe we can do it every week. The community votes for what modules are like, are the most important to the community.
Yeah, most
And
interesting, entertaining, or
yeah, yeah. And I guess, the interesting thing we want to maybe do, and I'll be making a proposal, so this is probably not going to happen. So, like, that's the first step. The first step is going through the main DAO and essentially having a general DAO that, like, basically supports early to the custom projects that might
okay,
not maybe that might not need a subnet. You could obviously convert it into a subnet or into like some decentralized application, but
okay,
on the surface, it doesn't. You don't need like we don't care about decentralization. We care about utility. You care about
Okay.
what's useful. So like that's kind of like
Yeah.
the point I'm like, of the general subnet. It's
Mm.
basically to find people that are just competing over utility
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
not based on some like, predefined function.
Yeah.
Because, like that's what the subnets are for.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially if you want to compete to score this higher function on this subnet,
Mm-hmm.
then like you have to like, you can participate in that. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's more like subjective
Mm.
and like more like value, yeah, if it's more value driven or like utility driven,
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to find those metrics
Yeah.
like that fully associate with the experience. And then people, so yeah, like having people evaluate and judge that, like token holders judging that is good. Now
Mm-hmm.
the issue comes when token holders are judging, like there's a lot of like perhaps lazy stakers where not that they're lazy, but it's like there's no incentive to, stake on a new project each week.
Yeah.
If by staking on one project, I have the same reward. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to create a system. We're making a proposal next week for this, and this will be an update that I think could be implemented the week after. But basically, like if approved, but basically,
Mm.
like we would want to essentially incentivize people to like, let's say every week we have a vote for like what's the best model, what's the
Yeah.
best module, and so let's say it's Friday. It's like build and stake is like kind of like the point in which the votes reset. And so when the
Mm-hmm.
votes reset, like after the build and stake, like everyone, let's say, presents their projects, or we have a list of projects that are eligible,
Mm-hmm.
like that people apply for, and then so the voters will then vote, and based on like if you voted for someone early, like if you're the earlier voter, you get
Mm.
more of the dividends,
I mean,
more of the reward.
this is what's currently sort of being drafted up in the background at the moment, isn't it? It's like a hashing out of exactly what the bounty system is ideally going to look like. And so that's sort of in the works at the moment. Um, but if we take it from the top and we sort of have a look at what exactly is coming next, because I mean that's the topic,
Yeah.
right? It's the next steps for us. So after today, let's say we'll go away. What's the first thing that's sort of on the agenda from your perspective?
Mhm. So this is a top item on the agenda.
Okay.
You would, yeah, no, this is a top item. Like
Hmm.
this will probably be implemented in 2 weeks, and perhaps even merged in 2 weeks.
This is the
And the
bounty
reason why
system.
it's not the bounty system per se, the bounty system, like, yeah, yeah, sorry, yeah, the bounty system, yeah, it does tie in with the bounty. Yes. So this,
Hmm.
what I was referring to was um, it's not like Tau has something called like dynamic tokens, and it's
Yeah.
using the Uniswap protocol for this. However, this
Okay.
is not going to be on the subnet level. It's going to be on the module level. So
Okay.
like, and we call it dynamic bond because we're not trying to. The issue with dynamic Tau is that it's very volatile, and so
Okay.
like it's basically if I stake basically the Uniswap protocol. Essentially, they're using the Uniswap protocol to incentivize stakers between subnets.
Yeah.
However, the issue with that is like you're not incentivized to stake on a specific validator within that subnet because you're doing it on the subnet, like you're doing it on the subnet level, not on the module level, like not on like the validator level.
So it
So they
doesn't
still have
sort
that
of
problem.
promote it doesn't promote
It
that sort
doesn't.
of competition between people that might be on the same subnet, but are sort of like potentially doing
Yes.
slightly different things with their validators. So if you have like more than one group or more than one developer on a subnet, if it's just going straight to the subnet, for example, then it's maybe not being distributed fairly according to what those individual developers are providing to the subnet. So what you're looking for is for that to sort of be a lot more directed. So the subnet is like a general housing system, and then we are sort of targeting the actual individuals within that that we think are performing the best, and it's going straight to them. Whereas BitTensor can't do that because it's the money goes to the housing system.
Yeah. Like so,
Hmm.
they're both trying to achieve the same goal, similar goals,
Yeah.
but yeah, the way dynamic Tau is designed
Mm.
is for it's a so BitTensor is more of a two. It's a 3-tier system. technically a
Okay.
4-tier system. The
Mhm.
top tier is the pseudo, which is like, the 3 pseudo keys they have. The
Yeah.
next tier is the root, like the root network,
Mhm.
and then or like, and then the next tier after that is the subnet owners,
Mhm.
and then after that is like the validators, and then after that is the miner. So it's like there's many. It's a very deep hierarchy here. We're trying
Yeah.
to flatten that hierarchy.
Mhm.
So we're basically trying to remove pseudo, like our 5, even though we have 5 pseudo keys,
Mhm.
removing that through the DAO is important, but it'll
Yeah.
also slow things down a bit too, because but it's fine. It's like, it might not slow things down actually if we do it correctly.
I mean, it
We have
just
a
means that
good enough UI.
decision making, I think, has to be a lot more planned out, and so
Yeah.
it's like it will be more difficult to make on the fly immediate changes, but it's definitely going to be a case of like well thought out and properly planned changes are still going to be able to come through in like a very timely and correct manner.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, like if you're
Mhm.
doing a runtime upgrade, that's probably for the best. You do want the community
Yeah.
to engage. No, now maybe we can use dynamic bond, like these dynamic bronze ideas. So
Mhm.
to essentially incentivize voting. So like if you like, perhaps we want to allocate a subnet that basically votes for vote like for early. It basically gives more emissions to earlier voters.
Mhm.
And so we could actually make things, like I think with our last few proposals it was fine in terms of
Mhm.
engagement, but like perhaps in the future, if we want to really have responsive voters,
Mhm.
we could, we know what keys voted for what, so we could literally have a validation system that just like basically distributes incentives or even rewards to like certain keys. Like if your
Mhm.
key is registered on like the voting subnet, or like this, I don't know, the subnet that basically rewards early voters, like
Mhm.
you'll then be tracked every time there's a vote proposal. You can then be like tracked based on like whether you
Okay.
voted. Yeah, does that make sense? Kind of like,
Like
so ideally
sort of
you're
like
voting for
loyalty rewards in a way, where
essentially.
it's like people who vote early and vote often are actually going to be sort of like incentivized, probably up to a cap, that kind of system, where it's like, and then as you
Mhm.
keep doing it, that cap sort of like keeps rolling over. It doesn't necessarily get bigger, but you know, being actively engaging in the decisions that are being made by the community sort of gives you a little bit of a kickback.
It should, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's what I mean. But and I think it should, because people that are engaged more should get more tokens. Like
Mm-hmm.
if they help the community out, that should be the goal. Unfortunately, the way we're doing it right now is very ad hoc and like not perfect. It's far from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to help align the distribution of our token directly with the utility. Now with this whole subnet system, it's very, very technical how
Yeah.
tokens are distributed, and I really don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to make this less technical
Mm-hmm.
and more social. That's the whole goal of why I created Commune, is to make this more social.
Okay.
So because yeah, like, but yeah, it's hard because honestly, man, I wish I like did certain things. Like for instance, like we had linear staking, we still do,
Mm-hmm.
but like having a simple like UI for this, which we're creating. We're hopefully we can release it next week.
Okay.
Where like I guess we want like stakers, or if you stake to our validator, then you can choose what the validator votes for. like and
Okay.
then your choice will be weighted based on how much you staked.
Okay. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
sort of understand. So it sort of means that you're not just staking to a validator that you think is validating good things, you're actually helping to dictate potentially what those good things are from your perspective by deciding what it votes on.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's a great idea to sort of push the idea that like the community are the ones who drive what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are to an extent here. But it's like right now, I think the community, like again, there's this tiered system,
Yeah.
And like I want to remove this tiered system. I want anyone to create something. So when you create a subnet, unless it has more, like right now there's a minimum stake that subnet needs to start generating emissions.
Yeah.
And so you can fuck around, maybe you spend gas tokens or you spend tokens on gas, but it's like you could technically just like screw around and create your own little internet on like your own subnet basically to do whatever you want. And when people start, let's say if you say, hey, look what I'm doing, and then like you can get like enough attention to like gain emission status. Now
Yeah.
I want to actually lower this threshold from its 5 million tokens. I think that's too high. I want to make a proposal to reduce it down to like 100, like a million.
Okay. Sort of just to
Um,
incentivize more people to just play around and get the ecosystem moving.
yeah, well, yeah, like they could already do that. But yeah, I just don't like the high requirement for stake. Like the way this update happened was like I like wasn't like I was in a lot of the decision making, but there are certain decisions that I also like I conceded to and said, okay, let's see how this works out. Like for instance, the 5% stake, I wanted it to be I don't know, probably not 5%, but probably 500,000 or a million tokens, at least. But they felt that 5% was a good enough threshold to at least for now, and then we can reduce it if the community wants to. So I'm going to make a proposal, and if the community wants to do it, then like we'll do it. But
I mean,
yeah, like
that's the onus, really, isn't it? Is that if the community wants it, we'll do our best to facilitate that happening.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and that's
really.
how we're going to move on for now on. Like it's basically any like major decision will require the community approval. And then we'll even do that to the subnet on the subnet level as well. Like on the subnet level, you're gonna have people defining the rules of their subnets. But like ideally, we also have the option for them to switch from authority mode to democratic mode in basic or stake mode technically, like a stake voting mode, which basically means that for that subnet change, the stakers in that subnet have to vote for it. Like, and so that just means that we're basically both trying to make this decentralized and like fair and democratic, or at least given the option to. Like by default, they're both authoritarian modes. But we give the option for people to choose democracy when they feel that it's ready, and we're still pretty early, so these things might not be used for a little bit, but just having that in place like makes it I don't know, I think is a lot better for like an open ecosystem in my opinion.
Okay, so we've got the sort of like bounty system crossed with the dynamic tokens idea. What else is does it look like is coming up on the horizon?
Yeah, so we're gonna see a lot more of different subnets happen over the next 1 to 2 weeks. Probably it's going to be around like 10 on the lowest, 30th on the highest of just like new subnets, and then some of them will be incentivized. Some of them won't, but yeah, that's the goal. At least for me, and that's not including anyone else. Because for me, it's very easy to make a subnet. It's more so you need to like figure out what are you trying to do, and so like yeah. So there's 2 subnets that I have kind of running, or that I've taken. They were running on the general network, but I'm going to be making new subnets on storage and subspace. Subspace basically storage is storage modules. So we just validate storage modules. The subspace subnet is basically anything. Well, basically, we subspace module basically has access to the chain, and so when people run their subspace modules, like we're just going to be like seeing how much access do they have to the chain as well. So like we want to basically have like many points of entry to like the chain, through essentially just serving that module, which is what we use already.
Mhm.
But yeah, just like, you know, we kind of want to decentralize each of these modules. Perhaps even each module could be a subnet, where you could have a module or a subnet that just validates a module. And like, you know, you just run a bunch of modules on the subnet, call the subnet the module name, and
Mhm.
then you have a validator for that module. So like we have, for instance, the subspace module has a validator called subspace.valley. And
Mhm.
so that is essentially the validator for that subspace module. And you can name these names whatever you want, right? Like
Yeah.
these are like, it's just for organization purposes, but yeah, like you can do valley.subspace, subspace.valley. Like it doesn't really matter. I guess it does if we're all trying to agree on the same name, but it's like,
Yeah.
but the point point is like you can create these module validators. So essentially, just having the module and the validator is itself a subnet, and you can technically have the module also be its own validator too. um, like, and so in theory, you can have a module be a subnet just by making the module also a validator. You have a subnet right there.
Okay, sort of like a
Like, yeah,
self-contained, like a biosphere, kind of like a little self-contained ecosystem all of its own.
essentially, yeah. Well, yeah. Essentially, each module could be a self-contained ecosystem.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's essentially how. Yeah.
Hmm. So what else are we looking at beyond that? If we're looking at obviously like a big bloom, sort of like a large growth when it comes to subnet generated and things like that, what kind of things do you think we can expect to be looking at in terms of like modules that people are going to be able to take advantage of, or functions that people are going to be able to use?
Mhm. Yeah. So I really am excited about time series prediction of like predicting all pairs, and you know,
Mhm.
obviously use with caution, but I think having a decentralized system where we predict all the tokens on Uniswap, and then anyone add their prediction to that is something that I'm really excited about.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's one example. That's gonna be the prediction, like time series prediction subnet,
Mhm.
um, or a time series subnet where we'll just predict the token prices of every Uniswap pair.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's one thing I'm really looking forward to. There's a storage one. Like the storage one is interesting because I'm trying to see how you can securely. This might not be fully ready for next week, probably,
Mm.
or for a few weeks, but like in terms of like the application. Well,
Yeah.
no, the application behind the storage module is pretty easy, but it's like what I have the goal of the utility, like the really powerful utility I think could be used here is doing secure remote storage. So if
Okay.
I'm trying to store something, like if I'm trying to save a password,
Mhm.
like, you know, I probably don't want to save it on like your private key. You probably don't want to save it on a Google Cloud server
Yeah.
or somewhere, like, you know, it's like maybe some people do, but 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 basically, like this makes it secure, or at least it makes it very hard to for the very person storing your key. Or it's not even a key. Basically, what we want to do is we want to break up your key into a bunch of bits and
Yeah.
then encrypt them using like a password, or like, you know, like basically like you have a password that you remember,
Yeah.
and then you encrypt them, and then you randomly send them to different computers, and then
Okay.
you replicate them. So you replicate sharded keys that are encrypted on your side. So even if someone breaks the password, if it's a shitty password, they'll break it. They're gonna have to find all the other shards,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they're all going to be randomly split too, which means it's going
Okay.
to be impossible to know how many shards there are that
Mhm.
you need.
So what are the
Like, yeah,
requirements going to be for like using this system, for example? Are there going to be requirements for people to actually make use of this, or is it just going to be sort of free for use for everybody?
well, initially it might be free for use, but we will probably require people to stake at least some
Yeah.
amount on like
Mhm.
on at least on Commune. Like, you know, for me, like the incentive isn't people stake on my individual validators. The incentive is people to stake on Commune. So like if you're staking on Commune, like the utility should be given to the stakers based on like their stake amount. And like
Mm,
that's essentially one that's how we're trying to connect these things. And
mhm,
so right now, the way we're associating the utility,
mm.
and the reason why we're not a security, is because in our code we basically give you more calls to the network based on how much stake you have on the network.
Okay.
So there's a concept called stake to rate. It's like a staking rated system
Mhm.
where like every 100 tokens you have one call a minute.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
So it's
So
like
if you have
a
like a
sort of
thousand
like a
tokens,
scoring
yeah,
system or a rating.
essentially, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
And so it's
basically,
just for every 100 tokens, you're effectively going up by, we'll just say like one unit, and then it's sort of
yes,
allowing you priority access based on the number of units that you have.
yeah,
Okay. And that's just going to sort of
yeah.
allow you to more freely use the chain, or
Well, no. So the point of this is to essentially like this is obviously a temporary system. This is an old mechanism that we might change too, for like more understand like just for more transparency because I feel like
Mhm.
it's still kind of tedious to know how many calls do like we kind of want people to know like what stake they need, like what they need to do. What does that translate to? Like if I stake onto this module, what does that do I get like something in return,
Yeah.
like other than the
Mhm.
APR? Like, it's kind of like, ideally, we want people to stake on things that give them access to what they're staking on. Sorry, it's very loud.
Sort of like a subscription. So their stake
Kind
acts
of,
like a
yeah,
subscription to using that service.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. It's a subscription, yeah. And like, if either party lie, like, if like, so the good thing about staking is like, if I stake to you, and
Mm.
if you start lying, or if I'm using your application, it's not working, I just unstake.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just like, and so we want to kind of incentivize honest baking, and it's
Mhm.
fully not perfect right now, but we kind of just like like want to create that relationship, like that social relationship between like people that have tokens and like let's say they need something, like or maybe use something, so they just stake onto it and they unstake it. It's kind of like yeah, it's weird. It's like buying a stock to use this product and then like unbuying it, or you don't have to unbuy. Yeah, but it's like unstaking it. It's basically like the stock market in terms of like, or not the
Yeah.
stock market. Yeah, I don't think it's not a good analogy, but yeah, no, that makes sense. Kind of like using a stake for utility.
Yeah, it does definitely make sense. I mean, that's the whole intention, right? Is to make the actual tokens themselves something that people can get use out of.
Mhm.
And so like one of those ways to do that is obviously give them access to either tools or functions or systems that they're going to be able to use. And then obviously the people who are developing those tools, functions, and systems gain benefits for having everybody who wants to use it stake to them, right? And it's sort of this feedback where the person or the team or the group who have developed it, they themselves are gaining a benefit, and then the people who are using it are also gaining a benefit, and it's this symbiotic relationship.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, yeah. Symbiosis. It would have been there would have been another name if I didn't call it commune. I probably would have called it some symbiosis. Something. Symbiosis.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like it's a perfect depiction of the system that sort of we're dreaming to build here. It's the idea of
Yeah.
like the both the users and the builders working together to shape the ecosystem in the way that we want it to work, because it's the same as animals and foliage, and every part of nature sort of works with another part to create this big cycle. And we want to sort of emulate that in a way where what we're creating people are using, and by them using it we can then go on to create more things or improve those things.
Yeah. 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 No. Yeah. The goal is to have people like vote on what they think is useful.
Hmm.
And that's like one incentive. Like you have a voice in terms of what you can like define.
Hmm.
Uh, or at least like hopefully you have a like that's our goal is to make sure that sufficient people, if you're engaged in the community, you have a voice.
Yeah.
We're obviously not perfect, but like, we're trying.
Mhm. Mhm.
uh, but like, and then the other incentive is yeah, like it's like you could like I guess we want to also create a financial incentive too, where it's like if you're basically like if you find something early,
Mm.
before everyone else, and like you should probably get rewarded like more.
Mhm. Similar to sort
You
of
know,
like that early and frequent DAO voting that we were talking about earlier, but not necessarily
yeah,
just for the DAO, but also on maybe a subnet or an individual module level where people who are
yeah,
sort of like first past the post, as it were, are rewarded for investing in. It's sort of like startups, I guess, in a way. You know what I mean? If you're one of the first
yeah.
people to invest in something, you should, in a way, be rewarded for recognizing the potential and the talent and things that would go into developing it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the current problem with the stakers incentive is that other than
Mm.
the APR, like there's an incentive to stake onto the network,
Mm-hmm.
and then BitTensor is trying to solve. There's an incentive to stake on the subnet now, not just the network.
Mm.
Uh, and we're trying to even go further. We're trying to stick on the module, like
Yeah.
so we make it like because if you solve the module level, you solve implicitly
Mine.
the subnet level too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it like it's not based on the subnet so much as it is like okay, if I believe in the subnet, then I still want to choose a validator that I trust on that subnet,
Yeah.
and so like and again this will not impact people's I guess the original plan
Mm.
was to have fully Uniswap tokens, but we
Mm-hmm.
realized that this was n- not, or people told me that this might not be great because people can lose lots of money, and that was a big concern as well.
Yeah.
Because Uniswap, it's like I stake and then you stake after, then if I unstake, then you basically come out with less commune
You bear
tokens.
the brunt.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we want to do it. We don't want to go to that extreme. We want to go to a bit of a like we just want to decide the emissions
Mm-hmm.
of the dividends of like the stake like of the staker emissions
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being decided by the amount of stake you have, it's decided by like the Uniswap like the price curve. And then so it's like and we'll constrain it so that the APR is only like at most if you like let's say stake early if you're the first to stake, you get like maybe 70
Mm-hmm.
80% APR, and at the least is like maybe 20-30%.
I mean,
Like and we can define that range.
is that going to be like a
Sorry?
permanent thing, for example? Because then that sort of incentivizes people to find a project, hope it succeeds, and then leave their stake there if they're like first past the post and they're getting that
Yes.
boosted
Yeah. It
APY.
is. And if you unstake, so if I'm the first to stake,
Mm-hmm.
and then and then people stake after me, and then if I unstake, then I basically lose that first position.
So then you obviously
Yeah.
have to incentivize those people who, if their project no longer works for them, for example, they actually lose money by staking elsewhere. So is there a way to sort of get around that by having it be like a temporary thing? Because then that also incentivizes people to keep moving their stake to new cool projects that they think might
Oh,
might
yeah.
succeed, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
you could have a reset back. You could reset all the tokens back to stable coins
mm,
every like because no one's losing money. Like there's no like these are tokens. These
yeah.
are these are essentially like bond mechanism. Like these are like bonding calculators that are calculating how early. Like it's basically instead of giving a higher APR for
Hmm.
earlier stakers.
Sort of like a
So
tag
it's not necessary.
on your specific ID
Yeah,
kind of thing.
it is using price dynamic. It is using like price dynamics, which is the same curve that Uniswap uses. So it is using tokenomics in a way on the
Mm-hmm.
token level, but we're constraining the volatility for one, but we're also only having that through the emission. So it's like this isn't something that you have as a token. Um like
Mm-hmm.
our goal isn't to make like our goal like we don't ideally want to make new tokens on Commune because we want to be multi-chain and we do have the capacity to make tokens and we might even do that and have that tokens proposal that I've made in like the black paper
Mm-hmm.
about like having module tokens and each token module having their token.
So are the module tokens
That might
effectively going to be the same as the dynamic token?
no, not necessarily. Actually, yeah, they technically can be.
Mm.
Yeah, they technically can be actually.
It's sort of like an
Like module tokens are
additional.
general.
Hmm.
Yeah, module tokens, you can create a module token, and then the whole point of the module token is for it to be any token you want, any token supply, any emission. Like, you control the emission, you control the like, the initial supply, like,
Hmm.
and you let the market decide on how, like, that's basically, it's just giving people the ability to create their own tokens. And
Hmm.
so, like, an additional thing I said with module tokens was, so in addition to like the mod, like, so like you can have a module token that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
It could just be on your system, and the price of that token is obviously based on like how much commune is in that like pool. That's with that token. So if you have like 100,000 tokens and this is like 1,000 commune, and it's like it's worth like worth uh, 1/100th of a commune.
Okay.
That makes sense. Like, yeah, so it's kind of like, you're using like automated market making. You're basically trying to like determine the price based on how much is in each pool, like each side of the pool, like how much
Mm.
is locked, and how much like of this is locked, and like of this token is locked. But it is complicated. But but ultimately, what it's trying to solve is just trying to give people the ability to make their own tokens. Like, we do see that like a lot of future like a lot of developers I talk to
Mhm.
want to do their own tokens.
Mhm.
It's just not super easy to
Yeah.
do it. So it's
I mean, I
like,
think it's difficult to sort of like. I feel like that's almost a step beyond where we are now because we're still focusing on this. Let's get the utility of Commai itself
yeah.
established and usable, and then once that has like its utility focus and it's actually being sort of like moved around and shifted and almost like traded in a way for services or something along those lines, then you can sort of like double down on that again and add in like the new module tokens that are sort of like building upon the initial use case that gives you a little bit more control within certain ecosystems or within certain modules, that kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. This would not be. I think the tokens would not be super priority. Yeah, it's not even a near term. It was just something that I was saying in reference to dynamic bonds.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, we want to do tokens. Now we're thinking of more like, okay, we don't want to really do tokens. We just want to incentivize early stakers
And so that's what the
to
dynamic
promote
bond is
active
going
stake.
to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's going to be like a
and you
weighted token based on how early you staked.
essentially essentially. So it's basically, yeah, like you have a higher APR
Mm-hmm.
if you stake earlier on a certain, like, yeah, like, essentially, like, we don't want to like yeah, like, we're still figuring it out, and so we'll probably have a more formal proposal next week, and then we'll make a
Yeah.
whole like proposal on the chain. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, basically the whole idea is that we want to incentivize early stakers,
Mm-hmm.
but not create too much volatility in like how much you can like win, or like, if we
Yeah.
went the token route, then you would lose money too, like
Yeah.
in this case, and we don't want that. So this is a good
Mm-hmm.
interesting middle ground where we're kind of like using token dynamics in a way, but
Yeah.
they're not really tokens. We're just trying to incentivize, yeah, like early stakers. Yeah.
Okay. So beyond the storage subnet, the subspace subnet, and sort of like these dynamic tokens and dynamic bonds, is there anything else that's sort of like in the pipeline, in the thought processes? Obviously, we spoke a little bit about the potential changes to the DAO, but is there anything else, do you think?
Exception to that. No, I think that's mostly so. Like, we
Mm.
obviously we want to. There's the front end we want to do. What we're releasing that's going
Yep.
to be connecting with like, basically the idea is we want you to connect with every module, and we want you
Mm-hmm.
to connect. We want you to play around with them, like, and like, even use them with into your own bit API. So
Okay.
like that's something that we want to connect with the front end more. Um, there will be some updates with ComChat, I was told, from
Mm-hmm.
like their lead developer. The Solana bridge was going to be an interesting one. Like, we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
looking into how we can integrate Commune more with like Solana tools,
Mm-hmm.
and like the Solana ecosystem, because I think that's a really important ecosystem to kind of like get involved with, and it's a really good ecosystem because of like how fast the chain is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like in Rust. It's good community. So there's that, and then like also the EVM. I would look forward to some EVM updates too. Like we want to basically have like more EVM tools, like
Mm.
for trading bots, and and essentially like also like we have a project someone's doing. It's basically it's not EVM. It's more so like um it's more actually no. It is trying to track transactions
Okay.
like more effectively. And we've had their help with some of the developers where we had like a developer farm, and they basically were the ones that were helping to track transactions, but it'll
Sort
just
of
be a
identify what
transaction
was happening.
visualizer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Sort of a lot of things to
yeah,
increase like visibility and usability of the general system by like compiling information like into the front end and things like that, and making a lot more of the system
yes.
accessible through like a standardized front end.
Yes, yeah, at least we're gonna have our standardized front end. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have different representations of Commune, like different views of it. Like you have like ComStats view, you have
Mm-hmm.
the the like who is it ComSwap view. They have their
Mm-hmm.
view of Commune, and then you have like AGI Commune's view of Commune, and then we're gonna have our view of Commune. And no one view is right.
No,
They're
they're just
just
gonna be
they're
different
just opinions.
interpretations. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
And so your vision for that is kind of for it to be like a compiled list or gateway for everywhere else, or sort of like what's the dream idea in your head of your version of that front end?
Yeah, so it'll basically be such that you have access to every module. You could like click on it, and then it takes you straight into like its experience, its portal, whether it's an
Mm-hmm.
application or like if it's not an application, then you can interact with the raw like module functions if you want, and then use it as an API. But like having that as an option where you can use it both as an application, and you can like kind of like perhaps use the backend. Like if it's not an application, if it's like a
Mm.
backend API, you can use that too.
Sort of
That
like it
just
gives you
like
like the stock coding, for example, that you'd need to put in somewhere else to make use of it if that's the purpose of the module, as opposed to it being like
yes,
an interactive module in and of itself.
yes,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
essentially, yeah,
So there's going to be like this
yeah.
compilation in a way of like the all of the modules that are currently created or like currently under development and things, or
Yes. Yeah. It's basically a compilation of like of all the module. Well, no. They're gonna be. It's gonna just show you everything that's registered on the network.
oh, okay.
Um.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when ideally we want this to be pretty seamless, where it's like you register. We want you to even register from a website, like from
Mm-hmm.
like our website. Um. Like because everything's on the client side. Like we're using Polkadot.js,
Yeah.
and we even have MetaMask too. Like we want to integrate MetaMask as well for like
Mm-hmm.
essentially EVM related things.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the whole business value we're trying to create is essentially have like a we basically just want to have like someone come in and like use anything basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then like maybe pay like a subscription, like a monthly subscription, or like a per call cost just to pay off those costs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of how. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, having sort of like, I mean, if for example, your version of this is going to be the first one that's going to come into fruition, that's going to, I think, help a lot of people start onboarding when it comes to the project in like actually making use of a lot of what people are developing at the moment.
Yes,
Um,
I agree.
but do you think that there might be concerns when it comes to the idea of there being like a lot of modules that might exist right now that actually aren't like adding to the ecosystem? They're not
Yeah.
contributing in a way. So is there sort of plans to like clean those up and sort of like have a look at them and and, potentially have like a system that deactivates or takes those down or something along those lines?
Yeah. So the subnet zero DAO
Hmm.
is the DAO that will essentially make that possible. Like where it won't. Sorry, it wouldn't make that possible. It'll make it hard to self vote.
Okay.
Um. Yeah.
But even just looking at
Yeah.
sort
It'll
of like
make.
a lot of the modules, because there's a lot of modules actually registered, right? There's many thousands at the moment. But not a lot of
Yes.
those are going to actually be actively contributing to the system. So is there a way to, obviously, if you're going to have
Yes.
a front end that's going to list all of the available modules, a lot of that might actually end up sort of being dead space in a way. So is there a plan to sort of manage or handle that aspect?
Yeah. Yeah. So that comes in line with the subnet DAO, like the subnet zero DAO.
Mm-hmm.
That will essentially. So I'll actually might be moving a lot of my stake into my own subnet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm trying, and I'll be leaving stakes for people that are doing projects and stuff. But
Yes,
like, because that's how some of our projects are sustained, we just like stake onto them,
of course.
and
Mhm.
yeah. Um, Now there is like some like we need to, but wait, we're trying to have this DAO for subnet zero
Mhm.
ready as soon as possible because it will improve the landscape, I think, significantly.
Mhm.
And as like I've mentioned before, like I'm very concerned of some actors not being fully honest with
Right.
the
Mhm.
way they're voting, and like we just need to just stop that, like
So is this
because
going
it's
to be part of the
not cool.
module curation DAO?
Yeah, yeah. So it wouldn't be possible to self vote.
Mhm. And so
Yeah.
that's gonna sort of like have implications when it comes to cleaning up a lot of the sort of like modules that maybe aren't contributing to the use case of the system, or
Um.
so it
So
might help if I go back and
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
like re-ask the question
yeah.
again.
So
So it.
so 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 basically, the way it
Mhm.
works is you have at least right now,
Yeah.
it's kind of like semi permissioned in a way where it's like you have 21 members that the DAO can change, and they can vote and change and like to any set of members they want. But right now we have 21 trusted members, and they're voting on like let's say what's whitelisted and what's not whitelisted.
Mhm.
Like so
That's
they're gonna
currently
and
that's
so
currently happening.
it will be happening. We'll make the announcement as
Okay.
to whether it's like as to when it's happening, but
Mhm.
yes, it'll be happening in the next few days. And so what that will do is it will essentially just like have like it isn't. I don't know. It's not like it is a little permissioned,
Mhm.
but it like the goal is to make that more based on what the community wants. So like I want
Okay.
to align that with the build and stake, basically.
Mhm.
So like and so and if the and so the thing is the community can vote the can change the representatives, 21 representatives. They could
Okay.
change them. And so so basically like yeah, like the goal is okay, sure, we have like 21 or like 32 representatives
Mhm.
that decide what's like what's cool and what's not, but the community can change them and vote people in.
Okay, so it's
Um,
these members
or
that
like
are going to be sort of like handling all of the existing stockpile of modules that's on the system, and they're going to be, I guess, like evaluating them as to whether or not they should like remain part of the main system, or
essentially right now, yes, but we want
okay.
we want those people to be like representatives.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I guess this is basically like validators again, but it's like
Human
but it's not based
validators.
on yeah, these are human
Mm.
validators, but this is basically like not the same. Like we thought that'd be good the previous system
Mm-hmm.
where like I don't know. Actually, like with our current landscape of like if we don't have dynamic bonding in place,
Mm-hmm.
then this is like you have a lot of situations where stakers aren't like incentivized to unstake, especially if I'll be honest, some people probably trade it's in crypto, right? So people in
Yeah.
crypto like to trade for. Sometimes they just don't even care about the project, and they're like, okay, I'm just gonna stake it, increase my
Yeah.
APR, and then
Mhm.
unstake when I want to sell. And so, it's fair. It's a free market. You can do whatever you want. But
Mm.
if our goal is to incentivize staking,
Yeah.
like if people just don't care and they just stake on a validator that might not be the best in incentives, like that whole kaboffle with me doing the max stake
Mhm.
was just because I knew that a lot of the stakers only stake to a certain validator because that was their only option on that,
Okay. Mhm.
like when they were off ramping. So it's like, it's just like, like it was just like, I don't know. I just didn't think, uh, I guess in crypto, you have to always keep one eye open and
Mhm.
never know who to trust because it's just like you just don't know what the incentives are, and that's fine. We're building a system that helps we accept those people, right?
Yeah.
Like those people, like anyone can participate.
Mhm.
Um but I don't know, we're going to be trying to decentralize um a lot of things, like a lot of liquidity we're trying to decentralize,
Mhm.
or people, not just I'm not really focusing on that, but in terms of having multiple sources of
Mhm.
something so that we're not constrained by a single
Okay,
point
so
of
it's
entry or
it's kind of like you're looking not only to decentralize but also prevent monopolization.
so from my perspective, those are demonopolization, demonopolization or whatever,
Mhm.
and decentralization are the same thing. That's
Yeah, I mean,
in my opinion, those two are the same thing.
I think they run in tandem
Yeah.
more or less, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just preventing there from being like singular entities.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole
mhm.
reason why I wanted to do a max stake was because I'm like, this will force people to stake other validators,
Yeah.
and that creates more. Even if people can make multiple validators for sure,
Mhm.
but the whole point was to create, not have a few people control where the emissions go.
Yeah.
At least if you do a stake clamp or if a max stake,
Mhm.
sure, those people can create other validators, but it kind of it makes it harder and more decentralized, and people have to vote more.
Yeah. And I mean,
And so more people are gonna, yeah.
it was
Sorry.
successful, and it sort of like stopgassed us into getting into the DAO where we are now. And sort of like now that
Yeah.
consensus is around, sort of, it's going to be one of these things where over time these systems are sort of going to fix themselves. That's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah.
Now that we have these sort of like processes in place. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, going back to sort of like the storage subnet, subspace subnet, the idea of the dynamic bonds or the dynamic tokens, if anybody has any
Yeah.
questions that they want to ask about any of these, then feel free to put something in chat. There's been quite a few things on the horizon that we've dotted about during the course of this conversation. So anything that you guys want to jump in and ask about regarding any of those topics, then feel free. Uh, but it looks like there's a lot, still sort of like a lot of ideas, and it's trying to hone in on which one is next. So I think you said that the plan is for a UI for next week. Basically, that's going to allow you to stake to individual validators within the subnets. Was that correct?
Yeah. So these are all happening in parallel.
Okay.
It's not me doing it. Yeah, these aren't sequential things. These are, this, I basically give these are each bounty
Mm.
that people are doing. Some are bounties, some are core work, but it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's these aren't these don't require anything. I don't require any of these to be done for me to unblock me. Personally, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing, I'm personally building out the core stuff and the core code, and we've
Mm-hmm.
we've recently merged with with Main, our core code with Main, and we're adding tests.
Yeah.
and I'm also improving the documentation with with the new we have a docs folder as well, where basically or like a docs website that we want to just we're kind of reorganizing still,
Yeah.
but that's most of where my work is going right now. But yeah, like those things that I mentioned, those are also happening in the background as well.
Those are like additional projects that people are working on.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so your changes to like the core branch that are being merged into main, do you want to talk a little bit about what those are entailing?
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, it's just mainly uh it contains mostly like a lot of refactoring that makes things a lot faster, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's no sync, there's no C sync anymore, or like sync function you have to do.
Okay.
It basically everything is essentially like has their own expiry. So they refresh automatically when
Okay.
they're like over a certain age,
Mm-hmm.
and like you could obviously if you want something to be really fresh, you can just do update equals true or something.
Yeah.
But basically, we have the docs for that that we're trying to still add. But basically, yeah, we're making things a lot faster. Like this makes the experience a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
Managing subnets. We also have faster. Like it just takes a lot faster to now see all of your modules on chain. Like
Mm-hmm.
without having to sync with the whole chain. We're just mainly it's just like making things better, and also a lot of the work has also gone into like the validator as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like the validator has been it's been an ongoing struggle of making it
Mm-hmm.
better and better, and there's always something new that happens, or there's different use cases, but basically we've been battle testing that for a while.
Yeah.
And it's we're just a lot of the updates come from the validator as well, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a more stable version,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just trying to make it more and more stable too, adding more tests.
Yeah.
And yeah, getting community feedback is good, but I think I also mentioned, let's say if something doesn't work for some reason, then ComX is something that's compatible with us, and
Mm-hmm.
using that could be they're more stable builders. So I would say Commune right now is in a bit of an experimental phase where
Mm-hmm.
it probably needs a bit more stabilizing over the coming days.
Okay.
So there might be some issues here and there, but ComX is kind of a different kind of it's a different view of Commune, but it's fully they're fully interoperable with each other, and using that could also get you to where you need to go.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're sort of
Yeah.
focusing a lot on this optimization and improvement of the systems and sort of like UX, kind of like user experience
Yeah.
aspect of the chain or the protocol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's what I've been focusing. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we've managed to cover a lot today. We've managed to talk about sort of at least 5 or 6 different individual projects. We managed to talk about the subnets and obviously UI UX and a lot of that development that you're doing on the core subjects. It doesn't look like there's very many questions, so it looks like we covered everything in good enough detail today. But if
Yeah.
anybody has any sort of like final last minute comments that they want to throw out, then by all means feel free. Otherwise, it's very exciting sort of seeing all of these incremental iterations come in little bit by little bit, building on top of the Jenga tower, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really exciting to see things build incrementally.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
looks like we sort of managed to cover everything. Then nobody really seems to have any questions, so
Cool.
we've apparently been very thorough today, which we
Nice.
like to see.
Awesome. Yeah, and also one last thing is
Hmm.
something that I'm gonna be more visual with a lot of documentation. I'm gonna try to add more pictures. I'm not a
Mm.
very verbal person, so I think having pictures explains my ideas a lot more effectively. So yeah, I just expect that in the future.
Yeah, just accessibility improvements, that kind of area.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's going to be great for other people who are obviously like more visual learners than they are documentation or verbal learners, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no,
I
very
agree.
exciting.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you everybody for showing up. Um,
All right. Thanks,
this
guys.
is this has been a really, really good update.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excited to see
Yeah.
where
No.
everything comes.
Yeah. No. Exciting. Lots of things always happening, but
Mm,
yeah. Keep it on moving forward.
perfect. Thank you very much, fam. Thank you everybody else.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day, and yeah, onwards.
You too. Thanks everybody.
Take care. Yeah.